Right, hello guys, welcome back. So in today's video, I have created a Titan build that is the most fun build I have ever played with on Titan in quite a long time. I promise you this is on the same level, if not better, than the well-known Consecration spam Prismatic build for the Titan, so please let me show you. In fact, much like that build, this new build that I've come up with excels in ad clear and survivability in all content levels, except you are now swapping Consecration for Unbreakable. Now, I know that sounds a bit outlandish, but please hear me out. The gameplay that you're going to be seeing in today's video is going to be a mix between the Master Lost Sector, a solo Legend Onslaught that I did with this build, as well as a couple other bits like the first encounter of Root of Nightmares, because there's a lot of ad density in that encounter. So with that out of the way, what do you get out of this build? Well, when everything is active, you have insane ability regeneration, your grenade becomes a pocket nuke that clears entire ad waves, and you get healing from both your grenade and your melee ability, as well as Devour and permanent enemy weaken, a permanent 79.2% damage resist at all times, and competitive DPS. So let's get into how the build works. For starters, this build revolves around a very specific combo of the Stoicism exotic class item. This combo being Spirit of Inmost Light and Spirit of the Armamentarium. I'm sure you guys are quite familiar with both of these perks on their normal exotic counterparts, but I will just quickly explain. Spirit of Inmost empowers the regeneration rate of our other abilities when we use one of our abilities, and we can basically use this to cycle them a lot more efficiently. And then we have Spirit of Armamentarium, which just gives us a second grenade, which gives us even more uptime on Spirit of Inmost Light. Now, I know some of you may be saying, oh, I don't have the class item, what can I do? Well, if you don't have this specific role on the class item, simply use normal Heart of Inmost Light, because even with normal Heart of Inmost Light, you still get the ability regen bonus, but you also deal more damage with those abilities, the part that is lacking from the class item portion of that perk. So fret not if you don't have the class item, just use regular Heart of Inmost Light. So using that class item, the aim of the build is to spam Unbreakable as much as possible. For those of you who don't know what Unbreakable does, it is a brand new aspect that augments your grenade into a personal shield that you can hold with your grenade charge and then release, and it does like a wave of damage in front of you. Now, this damage is amplified the longer you hold said charge and the more damage you take to that charge. Now, normally the amount of damage that you deal with this, like I said, depends on how much damage you absorb and how long you hold the charge for. However, if you specifically use the thermite grenade, doesn't matter how long you hold it, you will be doing that maximum damage right away. Now, I do acknowledge that this is a bug, but the only place that you're going to notice that damage actually falling off is on higher health enemies. Without charging it, Unbreakable is enough damage to kill any red bar enemy in any content. But the gameplay that you are seeing is with the thermite grenade and the bugged damage. Okay, so just to show you guys the difference between thermite grenade and any other normal grenade, I have suppressor grenade on here. I'm just going to hold it for like the least amount of time, and then we do 25,000 damage, so that'll be 25,000. And then if I put on thermite grenade, I'll just wait for it to recharge. Okay, so now that I have the grenade recharged, I'll show you with the minimum charge, it goes to 110,000. So yeah, it's about 4 times the damage just instantly. So yeah, that's why we use the thermite grenade. I also wanted to just try holding the grenade for the maximum duration to see if it makes a difference. So let's see here, holding it, boom. 52,000. So yeah, it's still more if you just held it, so definitely use thermite grenade for this while you still can. So with that out of the way, let's get into the other abilities. We're of course going to be taking Twilight Arsenal because it's a very good super for both ad clear and damage, and it's also pretty fun to use. Then we're going to be taking Thruster because it's the lowest cooldown. This is going to benefit Heart of Inmost the most. Next up for the melee, I'm taking Thunderclap. You can sub this for Shield Throw if you want to for a little bit of extra overshield. I just like Thunderclap because of the damage and how good it feels to use. Then we are taking the thermite grenade for the bug damage it has with Unbreakable right now. And then we're also going to be taking Knockout. Knockout is a staple aspect that you should be using on Prismatic Titan at all times. You should never really forfeit this for something else. It's just too free to have healing on all of your melee abilities, and just that emergency punch should things go wrong, and it will just heal you and make you amplified at the same time. Fragments are a little different because of how things are set up. So we have Facet of Bravery here. This just makes it so that whenever we get a kill with our grenade, which we're going to be doing a lot of, as you can see in the gameplay, it's going to give us volatile rounds to our void weapons, or if we get melee kills with Thunderclap, it's going to give us unraveling rounds to our strand weapons. This is going to help with building our dark meter. Then we have Facet of Awakening. This is going to make it so rapidly defeating targets with light or darkness damage or super final blows generates an elemental pickup of the matching damage type. So whenever we get kills with Unbreakable, it's going to spawn a Void Breach, which will just give us a little bit more class ability energy, which is just feeding into our Heart of Inmost loop even more. Then we have Facet of Protection, which is going to give us a small 15% damage reduction whenever we are near enemies, because much like the Consecration Titan build, this is a very aggressive playstyle, so we might as well have a bit of extra resistance when we are pushing enemies in the heat of battle. Then we have Facet of Hope to increase the regeneration rate of our class ability even more, so again feeding into Heart of Inmost Light. And then finally we have Facet of Mending, which is going to cure us every time we get a final blow with our Unbreakable. And because thankfully Unbreakable counts as a grenade, it procs all sorts of grenade perks like Facet of Mending and things like Firepower whenever we get into the mods later. So that's it for the subclass. Now let's move on to the weapons. The weapons in the primary slot and heavy slot don't really matter. Again, however, I would recommend having Buried Bloodline in your energy slot. This is because it's the freest class agnostic way of getting Devour. Devour is going to help us get our grenade energy back even faster. All we have to do is get either 4 kills on red bar enemies on 1 kill or an orange bar or above, and we're going to have constant uptime on Devour as long as there are enemies to kill, which is going to give us a lot more grenade energy for the kills that we get. So that loop of getting our Unbreakable back is going to be even more self-sustained. If you do not have Buried Bloodline, this isn't the end of the world. You're just going to be missing out on Devour. I did test this build substantially without Buried Bloodline, and it still plays very well. The amount of ability spam you can do is still very adequate, but this is basically just the cherry on top. However, there is one weapon type that I would recommend having in your primary slot, which is a Strand primary weapon. Now, why Strand? Because with Facet of Bravery, we're going to be giving Unraveling rounds to that weapon, which is just going to help us build our Dark meter even faster. If I had it, I would recommend going for an Imminence with either Enlightened Action or Demo with Desperate Measures, because you're going to be getting a lot of ability kills here, so it's just going to be buffing the damage of this SMG even more. But any Strand primary will work here. It's just to give yourself that dark energy, because if we look at our subclass, there is literally nothing dealing dark damage in this. So we need some form of dark damage in order to get our Transcendence fully charged. So stats to prioritize are Resilience, then Discipline, then Strength. Fortunately, the beauty of exotic class items is that it gives you a lot more freedom with your stats. You can get a lot more stats because it is a class item and it doesn't have spikes like normal armor does. And rather nicely, I was able to get triple 100 in all 3. You don't necessarily need this, however, it is just a nice thing to have the maximum stats, because it is the maximum possible benefit you can be getting out of the Heart of Inmost class item. Mods wise, the important ones are having at least 1 Ashes to Assets on your helmet to get more super energy from the Unbreakable kills that you are getting to spam Twilight Arsenal more. You're also going to want Harmonic Siphon when you get double kills with Buried Bloodline to make an orb. Then the sort of loop of getting our grenade energy back focuses on grenade kickstart and just kind of looping that as much as we can. So we have a Firepower here, which will create an orb every time you get a kill with Unbreakable, which when we pick it up with grenade kickstart and stacks on stacks will give us 2 armor charges. So whenever we use it again, it will give us a small chunk of that grenade energy back. I believe it's around 20%. I'll have the number on screen. And then we have Impact Induction to give us a small chunk of our grenade back every time we use our melee ability. The other mods don't really matter. I have an Innovation here to give me 10% grenade energy on orb pickup, and then another 5% from Absolution. I have Double Bomber on the class item and Reaper just to make more orbs to feed into the grenade energy every time we're getting kills and doing stuff like that, because we're going to be using Thruster quite often. Okay, so wrapping up with our artifact mods, it's going to be much the same as the rest of the builds we have on this channel, but in column 3 you just want Elemental Siphon, because this will just make it so whenever we get a double kill with Buried Bloodline, it will make a Void Breach, so again feeding into our class ability energy, which feeds into our Inmost loop. Then in column 4 we have Radiant Orbs to give us Radiant every time we pick up an orb, Galvanic Armor to give us a 30% damage resistance whenever we are amplified, which we're going to be doing quite often with Thunderclap and Knockout. Then in column 5 we're going to have it so Void Sources deal increased damage to weakened targets. This is just to improve the damage of our super. It's just to improve the damage of the Twilight Axis. The last mod we want is Shield Crush, because whenever we have Overshield or Amplified, it's going to increase the recharge rate of both our melee and grenade. And because Unbreakable is effectively an Overshield button, you simply need to hold it for a second or two and you almost have a full Overshield. We're going to have the first half of this perk active almost all the time, and then because we're going to be amplified all the time from Thunderclap kills with Knockout, we're going to have the second part all the time. So we're going to have as much ability regeneration as we can, which is going to feed into our loop as best as possible. So now that I've equipped you with everything, how does this build play, or how are you supposed to play it? So essentially what you want to do is, as soon as you get into an engagement, use your thruster, use your melee, and then your grenade is going to be empowered with the regeneration rate. Whenever you get a kill with that Unbreakable grenade, it's going to make an orb and a Void Breach, which will feed back into your class ability and give you that setup for the next grenade kickstarted Unbreakable. The next Unbreakable that you get will give you even more grenade energy back. At that point, you can start getting kills with Buried Bloodline to get your Devour going, and once you have that going, as long as there are still adds to kill, you should have all sorts of buffs rolling, like Devour, Radiant, Inmost cooldowns. There isn't really much thinking involved. It's basically, if you have an ability, just use it. This is very much like the pre-nerf Heart of Inmost Light rotations of old. Just use your abilities as soon as you have them, which will keep feeding into the rest of them over and over again. Now, some of you might also be wondering, how does this build apply to raids and like boss encounters, for example? Well, all you need to do is have your main loadout such as this here, and when it comes to boss damage, you can swap your Buried Bloodline for something like a Cloud Strike and then having a Hothead in your heavy slot, which will give you very competitive DPS. Especially if you pair this with something like the new Hazardous Propulsion chest piece, you can do very good damage. I will have a video coming out on this exact rotation very soon, so stay tuned for that. But anyway guys, that is it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed the build showcase. It is one of the most fun builds that I have played with on Titan in quite a while, and I really hope you give it a try yourself. As always, there will be a dim link to this build in the description, so please use that if you want to copy the build hassle-free. Anyway, that's all for today guys. I'll see you in the next one. If you made it this far, thank you so much. Your support means the world. And if you're really into the content I create, consider becoming a member of the channel, which not only lets you support me in the best way possible, it also nets you a whole host of awesome perks along with it. A massive shout out to these members up on screen, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now, dear viewer.